This is The Good Government Show.
I have the pleasure of representing, I think, one of the most racially and socioeconomically diverse districts anywhere in the country. This local office, it took me a minute to get accustomed to the fact that people recognize me in a level that I didn't experience 10 years in the legislature. So it is a little disconcerting when you're on a dinner date and people are passing you business cards. We are attempting to level the playing field for people who have been victims of systems. I think in this country, we tend to blame poor people for being poor. I stay connected to my community, and I stay mindful of the reasons I ran for office in the first place. You cannot simply show up on election day, cast your vote, and then wash your hands of us. Democracy should be an action verb.
Welcome to The Good Government Show. I'm your host, Dave Martin. On this episode, we're going to hear more about one of the biggest cities in the United States, Los Angeles, California. I'm going to talk to Holly Mitchell. She's an LA County Supervisor. Consider this. She represents some 2 million people. She represents a very diverse area of LA County, including towns like Manhattan Beach and Redondo Beach, right on the Pacific and to the west, and Marina del Rey, just up the coast, and then Hawthorne, incidentally, home of the Beach Boys, and then like Compton. That's the home of West Coast rap and the tennis-playing Williams sisters. It's a really big area, and there's a lot going on there. A lot. And one of the things she's doing is looking to see if they can improve how the county commission works. While she represents a very diverse area, she says everyone, no matter where they live, we all want the same thing, right? Safe schools, green space, clean air and water, and good schools where kids can learn and thrive. So while the areas are different, the goals are the same, and Holly Mitchell is working on making sure that everyone's goals are met. One thing she did was recently co-sponsor a motion that county ballots will now include economic impacts for proposals put forth on ballots. That's another step to help voters decide the issues, and it makes the plans much more transparent. That sounds like good government. She turned to government to make a difference, and with 2 million people to represent, she has her work cut out for her. So listen to Holly Mitchell, LA County Supervisor, explain how she represents an area with more people than states like Vermont, Wyoming, and Delaware. Think about that for a minute, and I'll have that after this. The Good Government Show is sponsored by Ourco. That means our community. Ourco has found a way to make government more effective. Ourco provides the OUR platform, and this is an app that blends in-person and digital interactions to connect people with their government, their county, their town, their state. The Ourco app transforms meaningful conversations into reliable data. They can turn results into projects and programs the community has essentially already approved. It's sort of like a flash poll by phone, but without the call and in real time and wherever community members are. Maybe they're at their house or their office or where they're out just talking about local issues. Maybe the choice is between putting in more local buses or expanding the bike lanes. Ourco can get you an answer immediately. With OUR, you can engage your citizens or any group, learn what they want, and build programs and policies that advance your county, your job creators, your constituents. So visit ourco.com, that's OURCO.com, and learn how they do it. And while you're there, book a demonstration.
I'm Holly Mitchell. I have the pleasure of serving on the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. I represent the 2nd District, and I'm from the district I represent, Los Angeles.
There is a lot going on in Los Angeles. It is a huge area. What's going on in LA?
Everything. And as I talk to colleagues from all over the country, I'm reminded that, the challenges that we're confronting are the challenges many of my colleagues across the country are. I represent 2 million people, about 179 square mile area. My district includes coastal communities like Manhattan Beach and working class communities like Compton and Carson and Inglewood. I represent unincorporated communities as diverse as Koreatown and Little Ethiopia. So I have the pleasure of representing, I think, one of the most racially and socioeconomically diverse districts anywhere in the country.
Well, I was going to ask about that because you could not find 2 more different communities in Los Angeles than Manhattan Beach, a very, very beautiful upscale beach community, boardwalk, trendy shops, high-end restaurants. A friend of mine lives there and has like a 500 wine cellar, and then Compton on the other side. How do you handle both of those very diverse neighborhoods?
The reality is everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants to be housed in a community that feels safe and welcoming, where they can raise their children to play outside safely. Everybody wants tree canopy and green space and a park within walking distance. Everybody wants schools where their children can thrive. And so, I think when you really think about it, all of those communities want, and in my humble opinion, deserve to have all of those high quality government funded amenities in their own community, to be able to work, worship, educate your children, and recreate in your own community is what everybody wants. And so, as diverse as those communities may be, most people who live there want the same things for their families.
Is it hard sometimes to balance, especially with budgets, the needs of our Manhattan Beach and our Hermosa Beach with the needs of Eastern Los Angeles?
Well, or South Los Angeles, my district. My goal is to really focus on equity. And we've done that in LA County most recently when we got our American Rescue Plan dollars, $1.9 billion worth. And I think the natural inclination of governmental bodies is to just kind of divide it equally. And so, the notion was we were just going to divide it equally by the 5 districts. And I thought, no, COVID didn't divide by 5. Systemic racism and classism and conditions that leave some neighborhoods finished and other neighborhoods unfinished didn't kind of divide equally. And so it was our responsibility to make sure that we invested those recovery dollars at a disproportionate rate into the communities that were disproportionately harmed. And so we created an infrastructure, an equity toolkit, a framework where we looked deeply in communities and looked at health outcomes and economic status and a variety of factors, and elevated those communities and put them to the front of the line for once in terms of investing. We encouraged, in fact, required.
Was there backlash from the communities that weren't at the front of the line?
No. And let me tell you why. I think COVID ripped the blinders off of everybody. People understood that there were communities that had limited access to healthcare services. We have healthcare deserts. We have food deserts. People understood that there were some communities that were disproportionately harmed by housing, limited access to housing and affordable housing. And so I've not experienced a backlash. And frankly, we've had a unanimous vote on most of our votes. And the reality is, when we looked at this equity tool, it wasn't just South LA or my district. The 5th district, Catherine Barger's district up in the Antelope Valley, has serious pockets of poverty. Poverty is sprinkled throughout LA County. And so, no, I can't say that we got backlash. People understood that investing across the board in these communities elevates every community.
How do you govern 2 million people? I mean, you have 2 million people. You represent more people than some governors. How do you handle
5, all but 5, literally, across the country? It is intense, hard, strategic work. I have an amazing team who we ask the questions as a part of interviews. Why government and why join Team Mitchell? Because for me, we have to be mission aligned in order to be able to provide the best services we can to every constituent. I have community offices in every corner of the district, from Lenox, unincorporated community, to Carson, to Marina Del Rey, to Koreatown, to Expo Park. So we're trying to physically be in spaces where constituents can reach us. I've got a team. How
long does it take you to have a dinner in Koreatown?
Right? Well, I live midtown, not too far, so I'm often having dinner in Koreatown.
Yeah, but when you go there, does everyone like, oh, here you are, let's talk?
Not just Koreatown, yeah. Trying to, walk into Costco on a Saturday ain't always easy. Ask my family members. I served in the state legislature for 10 years, but this local office, it took me a minute to get accustomed to the fact that people recognize me in a level that I didn't experience 10 years in the legislature. So it is a little disconcerting when you're on a dinner date and people are passing you business cards. Yeah.
Has that happened more than once?
Yes, it has happened more than once.
And how did your date react?
He's a great guy. He's my steady Eddie. And he just says people really love you and how proud he is of the work I do. Now I'm blushing.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, and it must be hard, though, to be always out in public and always have people grab you. Hey, what about this? Hey, what about that?
It is. It's disconcerting. I remember as a candidate for the first time running for the assembly back in 2008, and I was standing in line in Starbucks, and it was a couple. And the gentleman,
good to know you have to wait in line like everyone else.
Of course I do, and pump my own gas and everything else. And the gentleman turned around and said, "Ooh, you look familiar." So I just smiled and shrugged. And his wife turned around and looked. He said, "Oh, she's on that piece of paper on our coffee table." And I thought, what is she talking about? And it hit me, my campaign mailer. I thought, wow, my image is in the public domain. It's disconcerting.
But it's good to know that they opened it, probably read it,
and pay attention. Right. He was more impressed, I think, than she was, but I hope I got 2 votes out of that household.
I understand that one of the things that you work on is something called guaranteed income. I've learned a little bit about this. I know there's some programs in LA for kids who are going through the foster care program. Tell me about what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. Well, this concept of guaranteed income is not new. In fact, it was women like Mary Henry, some of those early welfare advocates that took it to Dr. King when he was formulating the Poor People's Campaign in 1967. And the concept really is that there is value and respect in all work. You know, we tend to elevate people who have higher earnings at a disproportionate rate than people who take care of our elderly, our sick, teach our children, who don't earn as much. And so this notion is, if we provide people with a guaranteed income, it kind of levels the playing field. It offers a sense of respect to everyone.
But aren't you just giving them money, and doesn't that make it sort of less valuable if you're just giving it to them?
No. We are attempting to level the playing field for people who have been victims of systems. I think in this country, we tend to blame poor people for being poor. We blame them for the conditions in which they live. We blame them for the fact that they live in what I call unfinished neighborhoods that government hasn't invested in at equal rates. They're unfinished neighborhoods. And so we're trying to create a culture shift in terms of how we think about poverty and not continue to blame people who are living in poverty, but look at systemic poverty. What were the willful acts of government that left communities and people behind? Redlining, banking policies that don't support people equally. I would argue this current Supreme Court ruling with regard to college admissions. In Manhattan Beach, you talked about you have a friend who lives there. We just had the wonderful opportunity as county government to return a piece of property to a family who lost it 100 years ago based on an act of government, based on a racist act of government.
They got their house back?
They got their property back. The Bruce's Beach, piece of property that was taken through eminent domain inappropriately. Eminent domain, you're supposed to take a piece of property if it's going to be...
I saw this, yes.
It's going to be used for public good. They seized the property from this black couple, Charles and Willa Bruce, 100 years ago, who had the entrepreneurial vision and resources to buy beachfront property and build a resort for black people 100 years ago. People in Manhattan Beach had a concern. The Klan got involved, and the civic leaders seized that property with the supposed intention of turning it over to a park, and for decades, nothing was built on it. It came into the possession of the county, and we took aggressive action to correct that past wrong and return that parcel of property. So let's think about land ownership and how that builds multi-generational wealth. That family was denied that right. You know the value of Manhattan Beach property today.
Sure.
If 3 generations of Bruces had benefited from the value of that land, what their life trajectory, how it would have been different.
Or at least had a great house on a great spot.
And have great family wealth based on the value of that property. So that's what I mean in terms of actions sometimes government took. You know, we know about the burning of in Oklahoma, of Tulsa, when Black businesses were burned, when actions were taken to rob communities of the opportunity of multi-generational wealth, to send their children to college, to not have generations of Black and brown people burdened by debt. Those are the things we're trying to course correct. And so it's not a matter of giving people money and they don't value it. We've had amazing research results where we've seen where people are doing things like investing and starting small businesses, creating savings accounts for the first time so maybe they can buy property. You know, mothers who are working multiple part-time jobs who can quit one of them and be at home with her kids when they come home from school, or pay for tutoring because kids are kind of struggling coming out of COVID. So we've heard wonderful stories of what people have been able to do when they have a little room to breathe. When you live on the edge every month, what it does to your mental health, your physical health, your ability to have healthy interactions with your kid.
And everyday stressful.
It's an everyday stressor when you're on the edge. And all of the studies show that most Americans don't have enough money in the savings account to manage one unanticipated expense, one broken carburetor, one negative health bill. So we're trying to create an opportunity for people who live on the edge every day to have a little extra income to support themselves and their families. And tragically, when we look at the evaluations across the country, the LA County model, the LA City model, models all over the country, people are spending it on things like rent and food.
The basics.
The core basics that everyone should be able to, when you are working, you should be able to cover those basic necessities for your family. And far too many Americans cannot.
So on the Good Government Show, we love to hear about good government projects. Explain a little bit briefly, if you would, how the Guaranteed Income Program works.
Yes. So there are models and pilots all over the country. The Breathe program that LA County brought forward is providing 1,200 Angelenos $1,000 a month for 3 years. We're working with the University of Pennsylvania, Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, because we're doing the evaluation research on all of these pilots all over the country.
So this isn't enough money to live on. It's just enough money to make life a little easier.
It is not enough money to live on. This notion that, they'll stop working. Nobody's stopping work. It is additional income so you can breathe. That's why we called it the Breathe program.
Who came up with that name?
I did, actually, because I saw a news clip of a woman being interviewed who was in the city of Compton's program. Compton had a guaranteed income program, and she said, "It just let me breathe." And I thought about it in terms of my own life experience. Those times when you've been a little short during the month. I remember 13, 14 years old. My mother had gone through a recent divorce. Had not been working, trying to find work. And that's when I learned when a utility bill comes in the mail in an envelope that's pink or green, that means something. That means
it's time for me to go play.
It means
I'm getting out of the house.
It means you got to pay the utility bill in short order. And so when I presented yesterday at NACo, and I said, everybody just pause for 10 or 15 seconds and think about a time when you couldn't breathe, when a bill, a circumstance literally tightened your chest. And when I looked out in this audience of hundreds of local elected officials, I can't tell you how many heads I saw nodding. We've all had that experience. And so we named it Breathe because the goal is to give you just enough room to breathe. We've done some of our early, evaluations and done some interviews, and we've heard stories coming out of COVID. Help me secure my housing. In the city of LA, every day we house 212 formerly unhoused people, and every day 225 new people enter houselessness. So if we can stem that tide, and if this population could use that extra income to cover their rent, to get them through, we've got people that have gone back to school, getting CNA certification. So they're improving their own condition. It's 3 years. It's a pilot. They know that. But in 3 years, they may have gotten a certification, gotten an AA.
Well, have you had anybody go through this for 3 years yet?
No. This is, we launched our program last July, so we're just at year 1.
All right, so you have to come back in 2 years.
I'll be happy to come back in 2 years. And
with success stories and good government, right?
With all the stories, those that were successful and those that may not have been. And my ultimate goal, just to tell you my secret, I hope with these pilots all over the country, that government at every level, federal, state, and county, will begin to look differently at how we structure our entitlement programs, that they are often so restrictive that we are holding people in poverty as opposed to lifting them out. So I hope that we will learn from this and think differently. I'm sure when those presidents envisioned Social Security and Medicare, there were people that said, oh, government should be involved in those ways. I hope guaranteed income really becomes this country's next visionary program about how to truly lift people out of poverty permanently.
And I understand you have some visions for how government should operate.
Well, I brought forward a motion in Los Angeles County to say that we should pause and look at our own governance infrastructure. We operate probably primarily the way the founding fathers, I'm sure they were all fathers of LA County when they chartered the county, 100 plus years ago. They never envisioned 10 million residents. And so our founding charter says there will be 5. So we're
so maybe represent less than 2 billion people sometime.
So we're going to take a look, and we're doing a nationwide search. We've got an academic institution doing a nationwide search at looking at models of governance, so we can look at various options that may suit LA County and our constituents a little bit better. Looking at ways in which
Are the other county commissioners on board? Is this something everyone's?
It was a unanimous vote. There was lots of conversation, lots of debate, but it was a unanimous vote.
What do the residents, the citizens, are they on board with this?
Well, it's interesting because there have been ballot initiatives to expand the board. All of them have failed. Yet when you talk to people, they say, oh, it's 2 million, it's too many. I think that's the natural kind of assumption and inclination. And yet when it was put before the voters to make a different decision, they were defeated. Not really sure why. So whatever we come up with, because it will change the charter, it will have to go to the voters. So the voters will ultimately have the say. But I think that we have a responsibility to look nationwide at governance practices and perhaps come up with some models to give the voters new choices.
So when you go back, could you just give this show to all the 2 billion of your voters and have them listen?
Happy to.
Good. All right, now, that was the warm-up.
Okay.
All right, now we're going to get to the hard part.
I'm ready.
After you get done with this episode, hear more good government stories with our friends at How to Really Run a City. Former mayors Kasim Reed of Atlanta and Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and their co-host, journalist and author Larry Platt, talk with guests and other mayors about how to really get stuff done in cities around the nation. Check them out where you're listening now or through their nonprofit news site, thephiladelphiacitizen.org/podcasts. This is our questionnaire. We're going to get to your philosophy of government. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. You were a state senator. Now you're a county commissioner. Define good government.
Good government is a government that makes decisions for the least among us. Good government is government that elevates, the lowest boat. Because if you elevate that boat, everybody prospers. Good government is government that is responsive, that is equity focused to meet the needs of the least among us, and is transparent.
How do you judge your success and whether you're providing good government?
I think for me, it's a gut check. It's being forever mindful about why I ran for office in the first place. And my personal story very quickly is I was running the largest child development agency in the country. And we were going to the state legislature to a budget hearing because the legislature was proposing to cut $1 billion out of subsidized childcare. And I got there and there was not one LA County member in this committee, and LA County is home to 1/3 of our state's children. And I thought, there is no one here representing 1/3 of the kids in this state. And I knew intuitively that I had knowledge, work experience, life experience, more so than the 3 men on that subcommittee who were about to make that decision. And I sat in that budget hearing and decided to run for the state assembly. Fast forward 2 years, I won. And the speaker then, John Perez, made me chair of that very same subcommittee. And, 10 years later, we got that $1 billion back in subsidized childcare. So you
went from sitting in the back of the room saying, I could do this better, to doing it better.
That part, yes. And so for me, it's a gut check. When I think about Miss Jones on the corner of 49th and Central, who is doing everything she can to foster her grandkids on her fixed income, and that I have the power to translate her everyday lived experience into policies that will help she and her neighbors and women in her same plight. I stay connected to my community, and I stay mindful of the reasons I ran for office in the first place.
How can the voters, the constituents, know if they're getting good government?
They have to pay attention. You cannot simply show up on election day, cast your vote, and then wash your hands of us. It's a two-way street. I tell people every day, I am a public servant, and you have a job to do, which is to hold me accountable. That means you have to sign up for our newsletters. You have to watch. Now, particularly after COVID, I don't know if there's a single elected body that doesn't broadcast either online or television our proceedings. You have to show up.
So you want more people to have your picture lying on their living room?
No. I want more people to know who their elected officials are, to understand the kinds of decisions we make and the impact it has on their everyday lives, and to know, LA County Board of Supervisors meets on Tuesday morning. Let me tune in and see what they're talking about. Democracy should be an action verb. And that means our citizenry and our residents have to engage and be informed too.
I think you probably just answered this, but the next question in our questionnaire is, what should people do if they're not happy with the way things are going?
Communicate, share it. We get thousands of emails a day.
Or stop you at dinner.
Or stop me at dinner. Or drop into my DMs, as people like to do, or on Facebook. And I think, unfortunately, I tell people I don't have the luxury of being a single topic policymaker. So I have some constituents who focus on one issue. And if they don't agree with what I've done on that one issue, then throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think people should look broadly and have a couple of topics that are important to them. I'm not a single issue constituent. I too am a constituent and communicate with my elected officials on a regular basis. But it really is to look broadly, to understand my philosophy around governance, my priorities, which are all on my website, and which I talk about very openly all the time.
So you served in the state Senate. Now you're county supervisor.
Assembly first, Senate, and now county supervisor.
What would you like people to know about government? You've seen it from 3 different perspectives. What would you like people to know?
Great question. What I'd like people to know about government is 9 times out of 10, government works. And local government during COVID worked in ways that far too many people just don't even understand. When I understood, I serve on the Air Quality Management District. I served on the Sanitation Board when I was chair last year, to go and see the sanitation operations, to understand what happens beyond when I put my cans on the curb on Thursday nights and don't think twice about the green, the blue, or the black can, to understand the water table and understand the role I can play as a citizen in making sure that the water in my community is clean, to understand litter and trash and everything that goes in the sewer goes in the ocean, and the role government plays in protecting the environment. It is mind-boggling. So there's so many elements of government that people just don't think about.
How do you learn on the job things like that you have no relationship with, sanitation, clean water?
Well, you better be a quick study. I hire people always who are smarter than me. I hire to complement my own weaknesses. So, for example, joining the Board of Supervisors, I'm on the Metro Board, our public transit board. Transportation isn't a policy area that I'd focused on my 10 years in the legislature. So I hired the best and the brightest to make sure that they could school me, direct me, and support me in a meaningful way. I'm now a transportation geek. I love serving on the Metro Board because the dots I hadn't connected. When I think about my goal of being a poverty disruptor and supporting families, is the role public transportation plays in the lives of low-income Angelenos. And making sure that I had bus routes that ran on time, that were clean and safe for moms with their toddlers to ride those buses to get to childcare and her to get to work, and were reliable, because if you're late 3 times on a job where you punch a time clock, but you're late because the bus didn't come, that's government's job to make sure that buses are reliable and on time, so you know it. So it takes a lot of introspection and work and informational interviews to talk to people who are subject matter experts to learn. I learn something new every day on my job, literally.
Who's your political hero?
Oh.
Who inspired you to run? I mean, obviously you were a contrarian. That's what got you in the first place. But who inspired you?
You know, when I remember, because I was that geek of a kid, Barbara Jordan, I remember the sound of her voice during the Watergate hearings.
You're not that old.
The pleasure of meeting Shirley Chisholm in Atlanta at the Democratic National Convention. I was a young staffer. I worked for then State Senator Diane Watson in my early 20s, and I met Shirley Chisholm.
This is a former Congresswoman?
Yes, the first African-American woman elected to Congress out of New York. First African-American to run for president. Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972. I met women like Mary Henry, who were welfare advocates, who informed policy. So I think for me, my political heroes are not just elected officials, but they were also people who had lived experience. You know, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Who is that?
Fannie Lou Hamer was a sharecropper in Mississippi who fought for voting rights, who famously shut down the Democratic National Convention when her Democratic club would not be seated at the convention. And, you know, the story is LBJ, President Johnson, created an opportunity to have a fireside chat to commandeer the networks because he didn't want her speech on the floor of the Democratic National Convention to be televised. And her famous line is, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." That she wanted good government for her community too. And if she was not allowed to vote, how could she guarantee that? So I think that there are women in history and women who walk among us today who influence me, who educate me, who inform my worldview of good government.
Now, I've been to Los Angeles many, many times, but I'm coming with you. We're going to Los Angeles. What are we having? What's your favorite LA dish? Where are we going?
You're going to get me in trouble. Well, it has to be more than one day.
Okay, that's fine.
If you like spicy food, I'll take you to Little Ethiopia to have some amazing Ethiopian food.
What's your order?
Well, because I don't like spicy food. Everything I always tell them, in mild or no spice. Injera,
A little spice.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll get separate dishes. I'll take you to Doolin's on Crenshaw for great soul food, for anything. I'll take you to Derek's in Culver City for great Jamaican food, for oxtails that will make you never want to leave Culver City. I'll take you to JR's Barbecue on Fairfax for some amazing Memphis barbecue. You see, you need to come stay a week. And then we'll go to the Stairs in Culver City and walk it all off.
So, an eating tour in Los Angeles with you for a week. You know what? There are worse things to look forward to.
Then I'll take you to some of our amazing museums, LACMA and the California Science Center, where you can see our space shuttle. So there's lots of wonderful things to do in the 2nd District in LA County.
Can we go to Old Tony's in Redondo?
We can do that too, because I represent Redondo Beach.
I know. I love that spot. I try to always go.
Well, then I've never been to Old Tony's.
You've never been to Old Tony's?
So you take me.
Oh, come on. Have you been to the Beach Boys Memorial in Hawthorne?
No.
All right, so we have work to do.
I'm
going to show you LA, the LA I know. You show me the LA you know.
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. So growing up, did you aspire to be in politics? Did you aspire to be a political leader?
I had a first grade teacher, Mrs. Weinstein, who in 1972 allowed us to build voting booths and ask us to cut out pictures of the presidential candidates and to watch the debates with our parents. And I remember thinking that Richard Nixon looked scary. And I talked to my parents, and they were going to support McGovern. So we talked about it. We cut out pictures. We told her who our parents were going to support. And we had elections on at school, 42nd Street Elementary School in Leimert Park. And McGovern was president. So when I came home and talked to my parents and I realized our candidate didn't win, I was intrigued. Fast forward a couple of years later, something called Prop 13 passed. Right. I can hear my parents discussing it at the kitchen table like it was yesterday about why they would not be supporting Prop 13.
What was Prop 13?
Prop 13 was the tax break that guaranteed if you owned your property before said year that your property taxes wouldn't increase exponentially like people who bought the property after said year. And it cut deeply into government funding. And so I remember recognizing that my park that used to have lights on at night, the lights weren't on anymore. And you'd ask why? Prop 13. You'd ask your teacher at school, can I have some construction paper, colored pencils? Oh, we don't have as many school supplies anymore. Prop 13. So everybody kept pointing to this political action. And I realized it had a direct impact on me and my neighborhood. Our local library cut their hours. The lights went off in the park at night. We didn't have as many school supplies, so I was intrigued. Those are my earliest kind of memories that connected me to understand that there is an elected body someplace that makes decisions that impact my life. And frankly, when I looked at the pictures of those elected bodies, not too many of them looked like me. I wasn't sure how many of them were from Leimert Park or lived in my community or prioritized my community. So it was a strangely young curiosity that led me.
So you've been keeping your eye on this for a long time.
For a long time. That led me to student government as a student, led me to work on early campaigns.
Were you president of the class?
I was not. And I lost the only election I've ever lost was 8th grade treasurer. Karen Palladino won. And my campaign slogan was, who will keep your money safe? Hollywood.
Did you write that yourself?
I did.
And where is Karen Palladino now? Is she like state?
I saw her at our reunion last year, and she's an attorney someplace. She's not a good government advocate like me.
All right. Well, I hope she voted for you. So we've talked about a lot of different projects, stuff you've been involved in. Give me your favorite example of good government that you've been able to provide.
Oh, excellent question. I'm very proud of our guaranteed income project. I represent the largest urban oil field in the country. When you fly into LAX, you see the Inglewood oil fields that are in the closest proximity to a residential community of any oil field in the country. They are, a quarter mile and less to many homes throughout the Baldwin Hills, Leimert Park community. And so we have worked very hard to get clarity around the chemicals used in oil drilling, and to look at health clusters immediately surrounding that oil field and others throughout LA. And so we are in the process of capping closed wells and really putting the health of residents over the profits of oil companies. I'm proud of that work. When I was in the legislature...
that's good work.
That's good.
That's good government.
That's good government. When I was in the legislature, we really worked hard to right-size our juvenile justice system. I think our criminal justice system in this country, the pendulum swings either far right or far left. And it swung so far that, we were trying 13 and 14-year-olds as adults. We were allowing children to waive their Miranda rights and be interviewed by law enforcement without their parents present. Those are two laws I changed in the state legislature. That's good governance and good government from my perspective. So I have a lot of examples like that I'm proud of.
Well, it sounds like a record of accomplishment over a long, long period of time. Holly Mitchell, LA County Supervisor, it was a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for stopping by. It was great to meet you.
Thank you very much for an engaging conversation. And I look forward to your trip to LA so we can go on our gastric experience.
Yes, we have a lot of places to visit, your places and my places. Thanks for coming by.
Thank you for having me.
Where do you get your news from? Where do you get your state and local government news from? Because that's getting harder and harder. And it's essential to stay updated with your community. And it's becoming increasingly important to know what's going on in other cities and states because they're likely facing challenges that you're grappling with too, or you're going to face eventually. That's why we'd like to welcome our new partner, Route 50, to the show. Route 50 is a leading online publication covering state and local governments across the country. They've written about states protecting themselves against the rise in cyber attacks, counties using AI to better support citizen services, local responses to crumbling infrastructure and extreme weather, and much, much more. There's a lot there. It's a one-stop shop for issues affecting state and local governments and their residents. And that's you. That's all of us. Do yourself a favor and go to route50.com to see the topics and solutions they cover and learn what other people in government are doing. They also deliver a daily newsletter called Route 50 Today. I see it in my inbox every morning. I check it out, and you should too. Thanks again, Route 50. We're excited to have you on board and being a partner here at the Good Government Show. What is it that county government does? That's the question county commissioners get asked the most. And the simple answer is everything. On the Good Government Show, we're so lucky to have talked with so many county commissioners and other county officials that have shown us how effective county government is. County government dates back to, get this, 1634, making it one of the oldest forms of government in the United States. Think about it. Roads, highways, hospitals, schools, recycling, law enforcement, water, sewers, and most of the county, those services are maintained by the county. That's county government. The National Association of Counties represents all 3,069 counties across the USA. NACo helps county government work better together through things like sharing best practices. When county government works well, that's just good government. One of the things I constantly hear from elected officials when I ask them what people should do if they don't like what their elected leaders are doing is this: they should get involved. And that's just what Holly Mitchell did. Working for a child development agency, she didn't like the way the money was being apportioned, and she sat there and thought, well, this is wrong. So she ran for office. She got elected to the California State Assembly and became head of the subcommittee that was looking to cut those child development dollars. That was the funding she had to work with. She changed that. Now she's a county supervisor and still working for change. I liked her answer to, what's the work like? And she said, and I quote, "It's intense, hard, but strategic work." I don't think she's going to quit. So that's a look at one of the largest counties in the U.S. and one of the largest districts represented by one person in county government. As I said, a lot's going on in L.A. Well, that's our show. Please like us and share us with your friends and review us right here where you're listening. And check out our website, goodgovernmentshow.com, for extras. Join us again for another episode right here where you're listening now. I'm Dave Martin, and this is The Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is a Valley Park production. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic. Please subscribe, then share us, and like us and review us. That's the best way to make sure we're able to keep telling these stories of our government working for all of us. Then listen to the next episode of The Good Government Show.